2020 turned all aspects of our lives on its head. From businesses, jobs, or the lack thereof, education, to our physical and mental health and more, the COVID-19 pandemic created not only a healthcare crisis, but an economic one too. From big corporations and Main Street businesses, no matter the size and no matter the location, no one was spared. That's especially true for people of color. Last April, 40% of Black business owners reported not working because of the pandemic. With me tonight is someone who is no stranger to the front lines of helping people of color get through economic crises and navigate the racial inequalities in the financial sector. Nathalie Molina Niño is a builder capitalist and author of Leapfrog, the new revolution for women entrepreneurs. And she is here to talk with me about the work that she's been doing to boost Black and brown entrepreneurs. Nathalie, I am so excited to have you here, friend. Welcome to Amplified. So I wish that I would have had this.
Here.
This is crazy, right? This is like so crazy. Mm-hmm. And I wish that I had a picture of how I met you, which was me having a picture taken of me reading your Leapfrog book, thinking, oh my God, new revolution for women. This is super dope and super awesome. I have to meet this person because she is sharing so much brilliance. So I actually wanted to start off for a minute by asking you to share with us a little bit about the book that you helped write. Leapfrog is right here on the screen, the new revolution of women entrepreneurs, where what you do is you actually talk about how we should be using hacks in order to leap over the obstacles that we're confronted with as women and people of color in the business world. So for all of our entrepreneurs who are out there, please share with us a little bit about your philosophy and some of those hacks to overcome the obstacles.
Yeah, I mean, look, the bottom line is what the World Affairs Council, says that it's going to take, 170 years? Every year the number changes. At the rate that we're on, for women to get to gender parity across whatever measure you use, whether it's political representation, economic, wage disparities. And that means that we're either going to allow things to move the way that they're supposed to move, follow the rules that we're all supposed to follow, or we're going to take shortcuts. And I know that you know this, Aisha, but ultimately the book is full of 50 shortcuts and tools to design your own new shortcuts for how we circumvent and basically not stand for this idea of 170 years. And just so we're super clear, anybody who's read the book already knows this. When I say women entrepreneurs, I mean the majority of women entrepreneurs, which is to say women of color.
Well, and the other thing about this too that I want to just kind of clarify is that when you're talking about leapfrogging, right, and taking shortcuts and hacks to success, it is because we are living in a paradigm where men, white men in particular, constantly get doled out, pats on the back and favors and ways to kind of leap over. And, we call that things like friends and family capital or, other words that we use for it. But you really wrote this book saying, look, guys get a lot of support all the time, and women, we shouldn't be so inside of our minds about what it means to have help, and we should absolutely leap in the best way that we can. So you're talking about leveling the playing field here, which is one of the things I appreciate.
Yeah, we don't get from the back of the bus to the driver's seat by waiting and being patient. I think that every movement on the planet teaches us that, right? And the economic movement that we have to get behind is no different. Absolutely not. And ownership is what matters. And this is why entrepreneurship is so important, right? I mean, representation seems to be the word of the day, and putting women, and especially women of color, in positions of board seats or, prominently placed on people's websites seems to be, the thing of the moment. But at the end of the day, if women don't physically own a meaningful portion of their business, of their home, of all of the infrastructure of the economy that ultimately we power, then we're still very much in the back of the bus. And I would say just the Black and Latinx community, which of course overlaps because there's a Pew study that says that 24% of Latinos identify as Black, just the Black and Latinx community in the United States powers an economy of $3.9 trillion. That would be the fourth largest economy in the world. We need to own the infrastructure that powers that. And today, of all of the money on the planet, women and people of color control less than 2% of it. Less than 2%.
Mm, mm. Let's talk about that money, because when we think about investing in entrepreneurs, first thing that comes to mind for so many of us is venture capital, venture capital, venture capital. And you talk about something called builder capital. What's the difference? And explain that to us.
First, I want to just frame, right? With the popularization of Shark Tank and all the different TV shows, it's a little bit like the flipping of houses genre of TV shows, right? It kind of makes you think that if anybody's in real estate, they're probably in the business of flipping houses. But the fact is real estate means a lot of different things. There are people who build entire cities, who build skyscrapers, who build things from scratch, right? And house flippers, sure, they're a part of the real estate community, but they're a teeny tiny niche, no matter how many TV shows there are about flipping houses. VCs are similar to the house flippers in real estate. VCs represent 0.05% of all business financing. It is a small, high-risk niche. And the whole premise of VC is to hurry up, put capital in a bunch of different directions. There's an assumption that sometimes upwards of 70% of the companies that venture capitalists invest in are going to fail. That is not an accident. That is by design. It's called spray and pray. And then you spray the money in a bunch of different directions. You pray that one or two become Google or Twitter. And it's okay if people go bankrupt and 70% of those companies just die. But when you were talking about our communities, where bankruptcy is not an option, bankruptcy is not something that you just bounce back from and then go and start a new company. Our families don't have trust funds. Our families barely have savings accounts. This is a catastrophic thing, not just for you, but oftentimes for your generation and oftentimes for multiple generations. And so this idea that we would spread capital into our communities that is by design intended to have the majority of the businesses that take the money fail is not really conducive to what we're trying to do within communities. And so builder capitalism, to answer your question, is this idea of investing with a no-fail philosophy, where it is not acceptable to have 70% of the businesses that I invest in fail. I'm investing in every business because I want all of them to thrive. And I invest in an entire portfolio of businesses because while one of them might become $1 billion company, another one might simply become a $50 million to take the business off your hands. But it's about retaining ownership, in my case, with the Black and brown communities that are starting and building these companies, hopefully for generations.
Yeah, yeah. You know, one of the things that I followed that you were working on in the last year or so is these Black and brown businesses were hit really hard by COVID. And while there was the Paycheck Protection Program, we all call it PPP, that was established under the CARES Act, designed to help small businesses, so many Black and brown people weren't actually accessing those funds. So tell us a little bit about how you were able to help minorities get the covered PPP loan when businesses were going bust right and left.
Right, or what I like to call, inspired largely by Melissa Bradley, an investor who I have immense respect for, the new majority, right? And one of the things that you said, Aisha, is that the PPP was designed, right, for small businesses. And yet what we know is that women are starting businesses at twice the rate of men, and that 8.9 of those businesses are started by women of color. So while I know that the talking point is PPP was designed to be deployed into small businesses, when women of color were not just not receiving the funds, but they were systemically locked out and precluded in some cases from even applying for the funds, then I beg to differ with the talking point that PPP was designed for small businesses. It was designed for certain small businesses, but it was also designed to keep communities of color from even accessing the applications in many cases. And so what we saw was, I think, an accelerated short-term, incredibly powerful in a negative way, almost redlining that happened within a course of weeks, right?
Yes.
How is it possible that our nation deployed nearly $500 billion, more than $500 billion, right? Because it was over $500 billion that was deployed in a really short amount of time, very, very fast and aggressive. And the people who were left in charge of deploying that more than $500 billion are the same banks that don't loan to our businesses, the same banks that don't loan for us to buy homes. And somebody decided that it was a good idea to literally give them the keys to the castle and hope for the best.
Didn't work out that way. So I'm actually, you know, excited that you got in there, rolled your sleeves up, and said, we're going to figure out how to make sure that our people are actually the ones who are getting access to this too. And it worked out. You were able to help a lot of businesses get access to these funds.
I was, you know, myself with a whole coalition of people got together. We rolled up our sleeves and we called in every possible favor that we could. And a lot of the banks that had said that they would only, for example, open up PPP applications to people who had existing lending relationships, we asked them to make exceptions. We made phone calls. We interceded.
Well,
You know, we did our best to mobilize as many of these people and then deploy as much of this capital as we could. But I have to say, Aisha, it's a drop in the bucket, right? It's really a drop in the bucket.
Nathalie, I got to tell you, I actually want to have a whole conversation with you specifically about the way that the government works, the way PPP works, the way that the Small Business Administration works in terms of getting funds or not to new American majority businesses. So we're going to have you back just for that conversation. Thank you so much for joining us here. Appreciate you tonight.